Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The small boutique was quiet that afternoon, the kind of quiet where every rustle of fabric sounded louder than it should. I knelt in front of the lower shelf, fingers brushing over the soft silk of a deep red saree I'd been eyeing for weeks. The fabric slipped slightly, and as I bent a little deeper to reach it, I suddenly felt a warm presence behind me, close enough that the tiny hairs at the back of my neck rose. I didn't hear him come in, but I felt him. The soft click of the door locking made my heartbeat skip, then quicken. A slow breath escaped me before I could stop it. I straightened halfway, only to freeze when his hand lightly grazed my waist, not grabbing, not claiming, just there, warm and deliberate, as if he were asking a silent question he already knew the answer to. "Didn't expect to see you here," he murmured, his voice low enough to vibrate along my spine. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The closeness pressed heat into my skin, and suddenly the air between us thickened, charged with unspoken memories, unfinished tension, and that familiar pull we kept pretending wasn't dangerous. I was just looking, I whispered, my fingers tightening around the saree as if it could steady me. He moved one slow step closer. I felt, not saw, the moment his breath brushed my shoulder. My pulse jumped. The saree slipped from my hand. His fingers reached past me to catch it before it hit the floor, brushing mine in the process. The electricity shot straight through me, so strong I forced myself to inhale to keep from trembling. Our hands lingered together just a second too long. Then he leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper at my ear. "You always choose the colors that suit you," he said. "Even the ones you pretend you're not brave enough to wear." I finally turned my head, and our eyes met, close enough I could see the tiny flecks of gold in his. The room felt smaller, the world quieter. Neither of us said the words we were thinking, but they hung in the space between us, heavy and undeniable. His hand was still at my waist. The door was still locked. My breath was still unsteady. And just as he slowly lifted my chin with the gentlest touch, the lights in the boutique flickered sharply, breaking the moment. I gasped. He stepped back, but only slightly. And the next thing he did made my entire body go still. The lights steadied, but the trembling inside me didn't. He stood there, watching me with that same unreadable intensity he always carried, like he wanted to say something but kept swallowing it, burying it deeper every time. We weren't strangers. We weren't together either. We lived in that confusing space in between. A space we created. A space we kept pretending was harmless. But it was never harmless. I stepped back, clutching the red saree to my chest as if it could shield me from everything unsaid. He took a slow breath, the kind that hinted at frustration, maybe with me, maybe with himself. "You've been avoiding me," he said quietly. I forced a tiny smile. "I've been busy." He gave a soft, humorless huff. "You're always busy, only with me." His words hit harder than they should have. Because they were true. I was avoiding him. Not because I wanted distance, but because wanting him scared me more than anything else. And because every time we got too close, something in me cracked, and something in him softened. The kind of soft he didn't show anyone else. He walked toward me again, but this time slower, cautious, as if giving me space to stop him. I didn't move. My breath hitched again when he stopped just inches away, his hand lifting slightly as though he wanted to touch my cheek, but dropping before it reached. That hesitation was new. "Why did you lock the door?" I asked softly, trying to sound indifferent. But the tremor in my voice betrayed me. His jaw tightened for a second, and he looked down at his hands as though searching for an excuse. "You looked lost," he said. And I needed to know why. I blinked. I didn't expect that. He wasn't the type to admit concern, not even in roundabout ways. "We said we'd take things slow," I reminded him, my voice barely above a whisper. He met my gaze again, deep, conflicted, raw around the edges. You said that, he murmured. I just agreed. A small silence stretched between us. The kind you feel in your chest more than your ears. His fingers brushed the sari I was holding, slow, tentative. Red suits you, he murmured. But you always choose beige, like you're afraid someone will notice you. I'm not afraid, I whispered. He leaned in just slightly. Then why don't you ever let me see the real you? My stomach tightened, fear, longing, everything tangled together. This was the part of him that pulled me in every time. Not the intensity. Not the physical tension. But moments like this. Honest. Vulnerable. Dangerous in a different way. Before I could answer, he reached past me again and gently placed the sari back on the shelf. His fingers grazed mine, intentionally this time. You don't have to tell me everything, he said softly. Just stop pretending you don't feel what I feel. My breath caught. My heart thudded. The room felt warmer. He took one slow step back, not far, just enough to give me room to run. Or room to choose. And as he turned toward the counter, the look he gave me over his shoulder made my knees weaken. Nothing was resolved. Everything was rising. And neither of us was ready for what would happen next. To be continued. The air in the boutique shifted again, heavier now, almost charged. He stood near the counter, pretending to rearrange boxes, but his eyes kept drifting back to me. Not subtly. Not politely. Like he couldn't help himself. And that was dangerous. I forced myself to focus on the saris, but my hands shook slightly each time I reached for a fabric. My thoughts kept tangling with memories, his fingers lingering on my wrist last week, the way he always stepped just a little too close, the way his voice softened only when he spoke to me. I told myself those moments meant nothing. But nothing shouldn't feel this overwhelming. The bell above the door jingled suddenly, and the boutique owner's assistant stepped in. She paused when she saw us as me flushed, him unusually silent. Her eyes flicked between us, sharp and knowing. Did I interrupt something? She asked lightly. Before I could speak, he did. No, he said too quickly. We were just choosing a sari. The slight edge in his tone betrayed him. And the assistant noticed. She smiled, a little too amused, and walked toward me. That red one would look beautiful on you, she said. Whoever you're wearing it for is lucky. My heart stuttered. I opened my mouth to respond, but I felt his gaze sharpen. He didn't like that. Not even a little. The assistant leaned closer. Is it for someone special? Before I could reply, he stepped forward. She doesn't need help deciding, he said, quietly firm. She knows what she wants. Those words struck me straight in the chest. The assistant raised an eyebrow, sensing tension, then excused herself to the back room. As soon as she disappeared, he turned to me slowly. So, he asked, voice low. Is it for someone special? I swallowed. Why does it matter? It shouldn't, he said. But it does. He walked toward me, one steady, deliberate step at a time. My pulse quickened. I backed up until my hip touched the display table. He stopped inches away, close enough for me to feel the warmth radiating from him. You're not with anyone, he murmured. And you know I don't like the idea of anyone else looking at you the way I do. Jealousy. Raw, unhidden, and terrifyingly honest. You shouldn't say that, I whispered, breath shaky. He leaned in slightly, his voice brushing my skin. Then why aren't you walking away? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because he already knew the truth. The boutique was finally empty. The assistant had gone to run errands, the owner busy in the back room. The subtle hum of the air conditioner was the only sound, making the silence between us feel louder than any conversation. He leaned casually against a shelf, but the way he watched me made it impossible to ignore the electricity crackling in the air. I tried to straighten the sari in my hands, but my fingers trembled. Each glance from him made my pulse leap, each subtle movement between us tightening the tension. "I thought you'd have left by now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And miss this," he replied, stepping closer, deliberately slow. "Not a chance." My stomach twisted. There was nowhere to step back. Everywhere I moved, he followed, closing the space between us. I could feel the heat radiating off him, the brush of his presence pressing softly, dangerously against me. "Why are we like this?" I whispered, barely audible. "It's too much sometimes." He smiled, a dangerous curve of lips that made my knees weak. "Then don't fight it," he murmured. "You're always so careful. So distant." But right now, he leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek. "I want you to feel this, just this moment. Nothing else matters." My heartbeat thundered in my ears. The air smelled faintly of his cologne and the silk of the saris around us. I could hardly think, couldn't look away. His gaze held me in a magnetic pull, a tension I'd felt for months but never allowed myself to surrender to. "You're going to make this impossible," I whispered. "I already have," he said softly, his hand brushing the edge of my wrist. The touch was light, teasing, electric. A sudden sound, a shelf shifting behind me, made me jump. He grabbed my hands instinctively, holding me steady. His eyes locked on mine, deep and unreadable, a mix of longing and restraint. The moment stretched. Every breath, every heartbeat, every inch of space between us screamed of desire, unspoken promises, and dangerous temptation. And then, the lights flickered again. He froze. I froze. The room seemed smaller. The air heavier. Something was about to happen. Something we couldn't stop. The boutique felt like a small, charged universe where the outside world didn't exist. The lights flickered again, casting long, dancing shadows over the rows of colorful saris. I could feel him closer than ever, his presence pressing into me, making my pulse race and my thoughts scatter. "I can't stop thinking about you," he whispered, his voice low and earnest. "Every time I see you, it's like everything else fades." I swallowed hard, my fingers clutching the red sari tighter. "You know this is complicated," I murmured. "We can't, we shouldn't." He shook his head, stepping closer. "I've never followed the rules for us. And I'm not starting now." The room was silent except for our breaths and the faint hum of the air conditioner. It felt like the entire world had narrowed to this one moment, this one space, this undeniable pull between us. Then my phone buzzed loudly in my bag, snapping the tension like a sudden crack of thunder. I reached for it, but the screen showed a message that made my heart stop. "Saw you at the boutique today. Thought we were done?" I froze. He saw the message flash across my screen and his face shifted, confusion, hurt, and something darker I couldn't immediately read. "Who's our?" he asked quietly, his jaw tight. I hesitated, my throat dry. I hadn't meant for him to see that message. But the truth was out, raw and sudden. "It's complicated," I whispered. He stepped back slightly, but his eyes didn't leave mine. There was a tension there I hadn't expected, anger, jealousy, fear, and undeniable longing all mixed together. "You've been seeing someone else?" His voice was calm, but the intensity in his gaze made it dangerous. I didn't want you to know," I said, heart racing. "I wasn't. I didn't mean for it to happen like this." The truth hung between us like a live wire, sparking tension I could feel on my skin. He sighed, leaning against the counter with a slow, controlled motion, his eyes softening just a fraction. "So you're telling me, it's not just me?" I care about you," I said quickly, almost pleading. "But there are things I didn't tell you, things I was scared of." He studied me, searching for honesty, searching for a crack. And when he spoke again, it wasn't anger that filled his voice, but something heavier. Something real. "You should have told me," he said, voice quiet but raw. "I could have handled it, if you'd only trusted me." I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw the depth of what we'd built, the attraction, the risk, the undeniable bond. And I knew this moment would change everything between us, forever. To be continued. The boutique felt smaller than ever, the silence heavier after the revelation. I clutched the red saree against me, my chest tight, my thoughts a tangle of guilt, fear, and longing. He stood a few feet away, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes sharp, but there was no malice there, only a raw honesty I couldn't ignore. "I should have told you everything sooner," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I never meant to hurt you." He ran a hand over his face, exhaling slowly, trying to release the storm of emotions. "You didn't just hurt me," he said quietly, "you made me question everything I felt." But, his gaze softened, and I felt my chest flutter. "I also see now that what we have, it's stronger than I thought. Messy, complicated, but real." My eyes filled with tears, not of shame, but of relief. Relief that he wasn't walking away. Relief that we could face this storm together. "I don't want this to end," I admitted, finally meeting his gaze fully. "Even if it's complicated. Even if it's risky." He stepped closer, close enough for me to feel the warmth radiating from him, the subtle energy that had haunted me for months. "Then we face it," he said, gently, decisively. "All of it. No more hiding. No more pretending." The tension in the room shifted, from raw anxiety to a charged, hopeful electricity. I could feel my heartbeat synchronizing with his, each breath pulling us closer, the air between us almost tangible. "I trust you," I said softly. "Even after everything." "And I trust you," he replied, his hand brushing against mine, not by accident, not teasingly, but as a promise. "We start fresh. But we face the truth first. Every time." We stood there for a moment, suspended in the charged quiet, the world outside forgotten. The red saree between us felt like a symbol of the complicated but undeniable connection we shared, passionate, risky, real. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Good," he said, a small smile breaking through the tension. "Fear makes this real. Makes us real. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe fully. Let myself feel the full weight of our emotions, the attraction, the longing, the fear, and the relief, all interwoven. He stepped just close enough for our foreheads to touch lightly, a simple gesture that said more than words could. The boutique, the sarees, the flickering lights, all of it faded into the background. We were here. We were honest. We were together. And the next step, whatever it was, would be ours to take. To be continued. The boutique was quiet now, filled only with the soft rustle of fabric and the faint hum of the air conditioner. We stood together amid the vibrant sarees, but the tension that had consumed us for weeks had finally shifted into something warmer, steadier, a connection we could both feel and trust. He gently took the red saree from my hands and held it up to me, letting the fabric cascade like a waterfall of silk. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "But it doesn't compare to you." I felt a blush rise to my cheeks, but the nerves that had once tightened my chest now felt like anticipation rather than fear. "You always know what to say," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate, and our hands brushed again, this time without hesitation. "I want to be honest with you," he said. "No games, no pretenses. Whatever comes next. I want to face it with you." I nodded, my heart swelling with something I had been trying to deny, something that had been building since the very first glance, the first accidental touch. "I feel the same," I admitted, letting myself be fully seen for the first time. The small space between us closed until we were inches apart. I could feel his warmth, the subtle energy of his presence. It wasn't overwhelming anymore, it was comforting. Real. Right. He smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. "We've been through a lot," he said gently. "But I think we're stronger because of it. Because of us." I smiled back, letting a laugh escape, a soft, relieved sound that felt like it carried away months of tension. "I never imagined it could feel like this," I said. "Peaceful, yet exciting." He took my hands in his, holding them firmly but tenderly. "That's what it's supposed to feel like," he said. "Us, together, finally being honest. Finally being here." For a long moment, we just stood there, surrounded by the colors of silk and the quiet hum of the boutique. There was no rush, no pretense, just a shared understanding and a bond that had survived tests, jealousy, temptation, and fear. Then, almost instinctively, he leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine. I felt my chest rise and fall with his, our breaths mingling, the world outside fading into nothing. A moment of quiet intimacy, powerful in its simplicity, wrapped around us like a warm embrace. When we finally pulled back slightly, our smiles lingered, unspoken promises glimmering in our eyes. We had navigated the storm, faced the truth, and come out stronger, together. And in that quiet, sunlit boutique, surrounded by silk and soft shadows, we finally allowed ourselves to feel completely safe, connected, and unshakably close.